Hey, Joel here from Ronin. Today I want to introduce you to our Mazda RX8 IRS Ford Explorer based differential kit. So it turns out the limiting factor on a lot of high horsepower cars is in fact the rear end. And in the case of Mazda, having very limited gear ratio options really is not ideal anytime you're making power. So both for strength and gear ratio perspective, we're swapping over to the differential from the Ford Explorer. Why an Explorer? What's up with using SUV parts? Well, it turns out that all modern Explorers are IRS. And further, they're using the large 31 spline internals from the later 88s that was also found on the Terminator Mustang Cobras. However, the Explorer actually has a notably stronger housing than the Cobra. The front mounts are gigantic by comparison. That's a common failure point on the Mustangs. The housings themselves are well ribbed, great for strength, great for cooling, getting some airflow going over everything back there. Because there's so much aftermarket support for the thing, you can get any kind of limited slip differential. You want to run a spool because you're a drifter or a drag racer? Cool, no problem. Any kind of gear ratio, you can choose to your heart's content. The range is really pretty incredible. So once you've decided you're going to do this, the question becomes, how are you going to do this? So we're running a blended strategy with a bolt-in rear and a weld-in front. The rear of the differential already had good provisions from the subframe. So we're tying to the provisions right on the bolts on the cover, nice big diameter there. The bores mimic that of the factory RX8. You can run any style of factory bushing. You can go solid if you want some Delrin. Personally, we really like the polyurethane that's kind of a blended spot. Happy for firm, but not so firm it starts getting harsh. Front mount is weld-in. Why weld-in, Joel? Glad you asked. Turns out, because the front of the subframe isn't made to be carrying this load, we need to spread that load over a wide surface area to make it stiff enough to avoid wheel hop. We ran the math in the calcs of a launching vehicle. You can actually be putting more uplift into these front mounts than the mass of the vehicle itself. Not something you want to trust to a bolted connection. So by spreading out the load, we're making everything in the subframe stiffer. Just stitch weld your way across the thing. It lands in a perfect little slot up there. Everything goes really well. But with this new large brace in place, you still got to route your e-brake cables. Well, we thought that through. Runs right here in a hole. Good to go. Routes past everything. Nice and clear. It works out really shared. So once this is all tied together, you've got that burly front mount, load path, the diffs in. Last thing to mention on the diff placement though, packaging a larger diff in this car is not easy. We really optimized the placement in this particular car by making it pinion centered. Pinion centered does mean that the axle shafts need to be slightly different length because the pinion is never centered. It's a function of the ring gear and stuff going on inside your diff. Anyways, with slightly different axle lengths, our conversion half shafts are actually ever so slightly different diameters, so that the longer shaft, when you put that torque into the thing, it's going to wind up the exact same. Your car's going to launch straight every time. Now, as noted, we're making the conversion between Ford and Mazda in these half shafts. So the inboard CV is from the Ford Explorer. The outer has to be from a manual transmission RX8. The manual CVs are larger, stronger. It'd just be a shame to go to the effort of really upgrading everything else and leave a weak link in the system. You need the manual CVs. The CVs themselves do need to be OEM. If you're buying, run down to the park store and buy a set of shafts like Ford Explorer to try to steal the CV on the inboard end, they're going to change this spline. The only splines you care about when you're buying an entire CV shaft is differential and hub. They can change the spline at the shaft. You won't know until you're trying to put it together. It screws things up. We designed around the OEM parts. Make sure that they're from an Explorer and from a manual RX8. You'll be good to go. So, summing up, weld-in support, stiffen the subframe, give you that load path. You need a stiff subframe to avoid wheel hop. Again, you're trying to make this thing bitchin'. We tried to get all the details squared away. Got all the gear ratios, anything you want to run. Oh, and lo and behold, because it's an aluminum housing, We're deleting the power plant frame while you do it. You're not even really adding any weight. It's a great setup all around. We hope it helps you out.